people who write essays. They write like 4 or 5, maximum between 6 to 9 words.
Okay guys, welcome to SEO Meetup. That long been really Christmas already. I'd like to welcome Roger, who's wanted to walk us through a product he's developed called SnapSearch, which is going to help you help Google index your complex web pages. Is that a fair summary? Yes. So thanks a lot, Roger.
Hello everybody, my name is Roger, and I want to talk to you guys about SnapSearch, which is located at https://snapsearch.io. Now, I'm a bit of a software developer, obviously, and I've been developing a thing called single-page applications. You guys know about single-page applications? Have you heard of the concept? For those who don't know, a single-page application is not an application which only has one page. It's an application that is basically the entire processing, the linking, all of that is handled by JavaScript. In the sense that HTML and CSS takes, they're not first-class citizens anymore. JavaScript becomes the first-class citizen. It is the thing that manages all the content, all the transitions, any of the dynamic animations, anything. And so you guys might have seen some examples of single-page applications. Now I'm going to show you some examples of single-page applications. This one I quite like is called hn.premi.com. Do you guys know about Hacker News? Yeah, it's a pretty popular kind of like forum for software developers, hackers, scientists, computer science specifically. This is a site that basically extracts information from Hacker News and then makes it more dynamic. So it's more interactive, like you load content without reloading the entire page, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you went to the official Hacker News website, it's all just static. You click on a link, it has to reload everything. There's no real interactivity in it, but with this is very, very quite interactive. So for example, on the left-hand side is a bunch of stories. If I click on one of the stories, now you need to make sure you pay attention to the fact that the site is not refreshed. The entire page is not discarded and reloaded. Did you notice that? Did you notice how the website didn't actually reload? What happened is simply I clicked on it and some stuff appeared there. This is called in a way Ajax, right? Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So what's doing is that there's some JavaScript processing happening behind the scenes, and it then fetches the content and then displays the content on the site without reloading the entire page. So I can switch to different kinds of information, and you can see that information tends to appear in a staggered way. Some things appear faster, some things appear slower. That's because of the network speed. Some information is fetched first, and later information is fetched later. Now, why would you want to have a site like this? What's the reason for such interactivity? It's mainly to do with user experience. For some things, you actually really do need a really high amount of interactivity. So imagine a game or some sort. Have you guys been to the music sites, or have you ever gone on to like Nike websites, or websites that try to sell you shoes? Have you ever noticed how it's so interactive and very dynamic? It's basically to help user experience, get you to feel the theme, so it's not just a static content of some sort. That's where single-page applications really excel, and that's what people use single-page applications for. Now, I wanted to basically streamline the way I develop websites, so I didn't want to, one day to make some static stuff, another day do some interactive stuff. I just wanted to have one single kind of framework to produce all the sites. And I thought that while single-page applications offer some advantages to content-based websites, which are usually just static-based, the problem is that if, say for example, Google or Facebook or the Facebook bot specifically, or other search engine robots, they access a site like this, they basically see nothing. They see a blank page because the bot that accesses their website doesn't execute advanced JavaScript. Now, you will read on the internet that there are some cases where they do execute a little bit of JavaScript there, a little bit of JavaScript there, but it's not it's not a full-featured system. So they usually process a bit of a small amount of JavaScript in order to, say, process what's it called, the tracking thing, the analytic tracking device that you might have put on your site to check Google Analytics thing. they might process that, but otherwise any kind of advanced JavaScript they won't process. And so if your content is coming in via Ajax, via asynchronous kind of content, so it's not there on the page when you first load it, instead you have to interact with it, and the content is then brought into the context of the page while you're interacting with it. And when Google goes to your page, it's not going to interact with it, it's just a dumb block. It just goes there and tries to spec whatever content exists on the page. So because it doesn't interact with it, none of the asynchronous content appears for them. And so if you are building a single page application content-based website where your revenue generation is based on what content you have on your site and not some other stuff, then that's a significant disadvantage. And so what people do is they don't build content-based single page applications. Now, so that was a problem for me because I needed to build all of my websites as single page applications, some of them which are content-based. And so I decided to create SnapSearch, which is the thing that solves that particular problem. And so as you can see, it's basically search engine optimization for JavaScript, HTML5, and single page applications. So in a way, if you're not really building a single page application or any kind of very highly advanced JavaScript or interactive website, then this doesn't really solve any problems for you. However, you might be surprised that you are probably embedding widgets. Has anybody ever used Disqus of some sort? Disqus to embed comments in your site, maybe Facebook comments, maybe other kind of interactive widgets that you might have taken from big vendors and added to your website. All those widgets, they're powered by JavaScript as well. So if a search engine goes to your site, it may not, and often won't process any of that widget-based content that you might be utilizing as well. And so that might still be useful for you. But otherwise, if you're just a static HTML, nothing happening, otherwise it's load the page, I get the content, there we go, that's it. It's just a document that I've just downloaded, basically. And this won't really do anything for you. But if you are building an interactive or a single page application where you have stuff that you want search engines or social network bots to see, and it's produced by JavaScript, handled by JavaScript, then you do need something like this. And how this works is basically like this. So what happens is that you have a thing called a client. A client is how we describe search engine bots and dumb kind of HTTP clients. These are the things that request information from your page. So let's imagine Google requests your website. We call it a client. It sends an HTTP request to your website, and what happens is that at the entry point of your website, which we call the front controller, you will install one of our middlewares that we've developed, which is all open source. There's PHP, Ruby, Node.js, and Python. But all of that code is open source. If you know how to develop your own kind of language-based thing, you can easily adapt it. And it detects if that request is coming from a client that is part of it, that is a client that needs to be intercepted. So not all clients need to be intercepted. For example, if I'm an average user and I'm using Chrome, and I visit your website, I don't need to be intercepted because my Chrome can evaluate everything. It can execute all the JavaScript that you have. But if a Googlebot or a Facebook bot or a Twitter bot, and there's about 200 other bots that are listed in the middleware that you're going to install, and if they request your website, then they do need to be intercepted. And it basically looks at the signature of the HTTP request, the text of user agent, and some other characteristics. There's a bunch of factors that need to be considered. And if it all evaluates to true, this bot needs to, or this client needs to be intercepted, and then sends a request to SnapSearch service. And the service is basically a whole lot of automated Firefox browsers. So there's a lot of Firefox browsers in the back end, and they're all load balanced, and they're being controlled by SnapSearch. And when the request comes to SnapSearch from the middleware they've installed in the site, it then initiates a task for one of the browsers. So this Firefox browser is controlled, it goes to your site, and then renders your entire content while evaluating all of the JavaScript that's on your site. And then it saves a cache, it saves a snapshot into the cache, and then returns that snapshot back to the middleware. And then the middleware replies to the client. Okay? And so during the generation of the snapshot, this might take maybe up to 4 seconds. Depends on how big your site is. If the site has a lot of content, then it could go up to 4 seconds, right? It also depends on how fast your website is. Now, because that takes, 4 seconds is a significant period of time for a bot to simply download some content. Instead, what we do is, that's why we use the cache. The cache saves that snapshot because it's unlikely that your site will change that much. And once that cache is saved, any subsequent requests to your site takes less than a second. I can't actually measure how fast it takes because it's below my measuring capability. I only measure by seconds, so it's actually always 0. It says 0. So it doesn't say 0.5 or something like that, it just says 0. But otherwise, the cache is also saved in S3, Amazon S3. And yeah, and that's basically the basic overview of SnapSearch. So let's check out a little bit of the demo. Like, what does this actually mean to the actual bot or client that's requesting your particular website? Well, I just put hn.premier.com, which is the website that I just showed you just then. So this was the single page application, and this is obviously this is the demo kind of thing. And so if I put this URL in, which I've already done, and I scrape it, what happens is that two things happen. So first I scrape it with just a dumb crawl. I use curl. If you guys know what curl is, it's basically just a really dumb client that just goes to your website, extracts all the content. Somewhat equivalent to a Googlebot. So whatever you see here will be pretty much what search engine bots, Facebook bots would see. Right. Now I don't show you the visual representation because that's just confusing. It's better to just to realize that this is the code that the client that's what it sees. And I've measured the content length to be 21,373 characters in this particular scrape. And then I've also sent a request to the backend servers, the automated Firefox instances, which go to your website, scrape the shot, and then present it back. And you can see the difference is that the content length is 37,551 characters. So that's about an increase of about 15,000, 16,000 characters. That extra 16,000 characters is the content that the search engine would not see if it went to the website, hn.premier.com, that it would see if it had included SnapSearch as part of its middleware system. And so it's up to you to decide whether that 17,000 characters is actually useful. Maybe it's just a bunch of boilerplate useless stuff. But maybe you're making a website that does involve taking in content that is asynchronous, that you do want it to be as part of your, I guess, value that Google might see. And then that might then definitely be very valuable. Okay. And so how do you get started working with this? So first what you need to do is you actually need to have a website that has a dynamic language for its backend. There are some other ways that you could involve SnapSearch, but mainly it's utilized with those kind of dynamic languages. So for example, let's say for example you have a PHP website, and this includes WordPress because WordPress utilizes PHP. But this particular workflow is more descriptive for, I guess, PHP applications that are built with the Composer package manager. This is just basically something that installs the middleware. So you run this command in your terminal. I'll explain how you might do this without a terminal because sometimes people don't utilize things like Composer. And then what you do is you just basically add this piece of code and you add it to your flow controller, so the entry point of the website. It's pretty short. That's it. There's obviously, it's easier to understand if you actually know what PHP looks like. But what you've done is basically you've obviously installed the library. So now you can bring in these free classes. You bring the class in, you instantiate the class, so you get 3 classes: a client, detector, and interceptor. Now once you've got the client, detector, and interceptor, you then need to just get the response, and then you hit up intercept, which will look at the HTTP request, and will check if the request is coming from an interceptable client, such as Googlebot or Facebook bot. And if there is a response coming back from SnapSearch, then we go ahead and we reply to the client with this response. And you can see we do some headers, we do some HTML content, and if not, then that's where the rest of your code puts in. So you just put the rest of it inside the else block. Okay. Now that's what you would do in a kind of like a well-architectured PHP application. If you are using something more legacy, then I did actually create an example for one of a particular person who asked for this. There's a legacy PHP client, which is kind of an example for applications or PHP applications that are not utilizing Composer or proper architectural kinds of systems. So therefore what you do is you basically download this, and then you download that, put in kind of like a folder. So there's your SnapSearch client for PHP, like so. And then you, say for example you have an index of PHP, then you just take the index of PHP and then you just write something like this. So it's a bit more messy, it's a bit, but it's intended for legacy kind of clients. But you can use this, something like this for WordPress. So you take the index of PHP in WordPress and you basically merge what's here to there. Now, I can't really go into too much detail on how you actually implement it in code. It's actually quite simple, but obviously for those who are non-technical, it's a bit of a mystery until you can get somebody to kind of develop your website. But there's other middlewares, such as Ruby, Node.js, and Python, all the same installation process. So if you have your own backend stack, such as .NET or Java, it's very easy to simply take the middleware that is already available on GitHub and just basically copy. You just port it, basically. And you can see that these are all the middlewares. There's a PHP node, client, and Ruby and Python. Just wanted to show you how many robots can be intercepted. This is the list. And in that list includes Googlebot, Facebookbot, Twitterbot, and a whole bunch of things you probably don't know about. But things like Embedly, DuckDuckBot, which is for the DuckDuck search engine, GalaxyBot. So of course, if you don't really care about all these other search engines, you can just remove it from the list and it will just operate. But if you do care about making sure that every single potential bot can get the full content of your website that is based on single-page application, then this obviously is a nice list. And of course, I update this list every once in a while. The last time I updated was 4 months ago. It's not like every day you get a new search engine. But yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's a documentation. Okay. So it kind of explains you the concept, which is what I talked about today. This is more of an API. So if you're kind of like if you're a developer and you want to work with the API, you can actually utilize this in order to scrape websites, or you can use this to create screenshots of different websites in the world. And which can be useful if you're doing some research or you're doing some sort of data mining and other sort of activities. So, of course, the question is, why would you use this instead of something like curl? Why can't you just curl a whole bunch of websites? Well, the reason is the same reason why we would use this on a single-page application. It's because your curl won't be able to execute JavaScript. That also explains it. Here's some notes. So, for example, there are some small issues, things like dealing with non-HTML resources, which is very easily solved. SSL issues, Flash support, JS disabled browsers, ensuring analytics, and software calls, which mostly don't apply to many people, which is why if you are interested in that, you can talk to me later about that. So for pricing, you just have basically 1,000 usages per month free, so you pretty much just use it. If your site is pretty small, doesn't have much traffic, then it doesn't affect you much. After that, it's 0.002 AUD per usage. So the usage is basically when a snapshot is created. So when a snapshot is created, then it's charged, but subsequent use of that snapshot, which is cached, is not charged. So if you have 100 pages, then there's only ever going to be 100 snapshots until those cache expire. And you can choose how long you want that cache to expire. So it goes configurable from 1 to 200 hours. So you can keep your cache all the way up to 200 hours, and that means no new snapshots will be created for like 200 hours, basically every snapshot that you've created. So the idea is basically if you have, if you get a huge spike of traffic, it's not like your bill is going to go high, because all cache, none of that is charged. It's only when the snapshot is created, and that's just when you first create a snapshot. And the reason why we have an expiry lifetime for 1 to 200 hours is because you're probably going to change your site a little bit, maybe different content. We're talking about single page applications, which are often interactive, often there could be changing content, comments, whatever it is. So if you want your comments, oh yeah, that's another thing actually. So with Discus, there's JavaScript. I'm not entirely sure about this, but if they were just simply using JavaScript and you were using Discus, then none of the comments inside Discus would ever be kind of evaluated if they were fully using JavaScript and managed it. Now, I'm not actually sure about that, but if they were, then none of the comments would be seen by Google, and you might want those comments to be seen by Google. Now, it's up to you to decide whether that's useful or whether that's true or not. I mean, there could be other kinds of commenting-based systems, commenting widgets that you might utilize, so things like that. So there's a bit of a small cost estimator. Now, after that, there's a bit of a small control panel that allows you to kind of see what's going on. So this is my control panel, which you can see there's 977 requests received, 455 usages used. Now this is for the month. This is 2014 08/23 to 2014 09/22. This is a progress bar. And you can see I have a huge amount of usages available because obviously I'm an administrator. You can change your monthly cap. So the idea is basically you can choose to say, I just want only a couple thousand usages available to me. So we'll never go beyond that. Now what happens when you've hit your cap? What happens is just basically it's seamless. There's no error on your website. It just the search engine will just go to your site and would just see what it would see before. So it's as if you never integrated SnapSearch in the first place. So what I would say is that it's seamless. You don't lose anything by adding this in. A small little kind of graph that shows you how over time the usages have occurred. So this shows a graph between requests and usages. So what's the difference between requests and usages? Requests are basically everything. So from requesting to the SnapSearch API, getting a cache snapshot or creating a new snapshot, they all count as requests. Usages only count when the snapshots are created. So usually you should see that your usages go down. Sometimes it goes up. The reason why for this graph, my graph looks up is because the demo that you saw is this. So people often add new websites to the demo, and that's why I have much more higher usages than my requests. But for you guys who are just doing your own website, then your usages will be far lower than your requests. You'd be a lot more requests, very low usages, because it's just your site. Whereas this is basically every site that somebody has added to the demo. This shows the domain distinction. So for example, I have two websites that are mainly using the API, SnapSearch.io, which is its own site. I'm not sure if you noticed, but every time I click one of the links, the website didn't reload. Did you notice how the content just changed, but the website did not reload? So when I first accessed this website, all of it was loaded in one go. And that's pretty cool because what that means is that people don't have to wait for page transitions. So there's a little bit of upfront costs, but once they use it, there's no delay between any transitions between content. Some little pie graphs, then of course a table, which is a list basically of all the usages that occurred, all the requests that occurred, so you can see that they're type. This one's cached, this was uncached, this was cached, this was uncached. Uncached would basically mean that a new snapshot was created. Cache means it took it for the cache, so the new snapshot wasn't created. It shows you what the time was and also how long it took to create it. So you can see that uncached ones took 4 seconds sometimes it takes 3 seconds. So you say 3 seconds. Sometimes it takes 2 seconds. But cached ones, it's 0 seconds because it doesn't even reach 1 second. You can also granularly change the cache. So I've got 207 pages in the cache for my account. I can prime the cache for so if you don't want to leave it to the search engines to initiate the caching, because the caching only occurs when a client accesses a page. If one of your pages is never accessed by anybody, then it's not going to go off and try and cache your page that nobody accesses. And so you can, but if you want to, you can manually prime your cache. You can also change your request parameters. That's based on the API and inside the documentation. You can also view your snapshots and also delete them if you need to, if that's necessary. And yeah, it's the same thing here, and then the same thing. Yes, you can change what's done, and there's nothing really else that's pretty interesting. So, is there any questions?
How long did that take to build?
About like just under a year, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I had another person helping me, but he kind of left in the early stages.
Like,
Can you just go back to the demo?
Yeah.
To the demo that you had, you know, the 2 screens.
Oh, the 2 screens?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Well,
scroll down on the code.
you want the same website?
The 2 that you compared, you know,
Yeah, yeah, the
with
2 compared. This is
number of characters.
Yeah. Just remember that if you are going to use the demo, make sure you have HTTP or HTTPS in the protocol. If you don't, then it will think it's a bad website. It won't realize it's a website. So for example, you can't scrape with that. But you need to add your HTTP to it.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the characters that was read when you used the SnapSearch, right? What are those additional characters? I mean, in your experience?
Well, if you are running a single page application where content is being brought in from JavaScript or dynamic activity, then that's what the characters represent.
Right. But as you said, you can also use this on WordPress. And
well, yeah. So with WordPress blogs can be single page applications. It depends on the theme you've used.
right.
If you've used a very simple static-based theme, then it's unlikely you'll see that much difference. Right? Now, what I'm saying is that some of those characters are just going to be useless characters that are there because of some basically classes, CSS classes. So sometimes when you evaluate JavaScript, JavaScript adds a whole bunch of classes for styling. That is going to be there as well.
Okay.
So your JavaScript is adding a lot of classes, usually for changing the layout of the site. Then all those class names, they're going to be there where they're not going to be here. Right? That's not something you care about. You don't care about class names. Google doesn't care about your class names. It just ignores it. The key is the content that you're missing. Now, I had some contact before from this consultant who's managing these large fashion websites, and they sent me an email saying that we've had these problems with search engine getting access to, the search engines aren't able to show any of our clothes, right? Why is it that I have 100 clothes, each is a separate article, but Google doesn't show any of the pages. I mean, it shows the main site, but nothing else. And emailed her back and I said that I've just tried your site on the thing, and it shows that the content on your site is being brought in from JavaScript, right? And there's huge difference, almost 80,000 character difference there. And those 80,000 characters are representative of the images, the descriptions of the fashion dresses and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so some sites you'll see a huge difference, right? And some sites you won't see any difference. I mean, there are some sites where this and this matches because it's a completely static site, nothing is changing. Now, in some weird situations, you might even see this thing's lower and this thing's higher. That's because the JavaScript on that site might actually be removing stuff, right? Imagine you go to a dynamic website and the website might remove some content. Then yes, then that would mean that the source code with SnapSearch would actually be less than the source code without SnapSearch. Now, sometimes you'll see nothing here. This is a common source of confusion I realized I haven't got around to fixing. It's not so much a technical problem, it's a communication problem. So sometimes you'll see nothing here, it's like a blank box of blank box. That's because you've just entered a URL that does a redirection. So if you've got the site, you've got a URL, and when you hit the URL, the server at that URL redirects you to somewhere else. Then what SnapSearch will do, it won't follow the redirect unless you explicitly tell it to. So there's an API parameter that says follow redirects. If you don't set that to true, and by default it's false, then it's not going to follow the redirect. If it doesn't follow the redirect, then what's the content? The content's just nothing, right? Why do we do this way? Well, it's because that's how Google does it. Google bots, Facebook bots, all the bots, they don't follow the redirects. They just hit the URL, and if there's nothing there, there's nothing there, right? It doesn't follow redirects, because redirects are for humans, right? It's saying, you've accessed this site, go somewhere else. Instead, what Googlebot does is that it accesses the site, sees that you've shown a redirect, and says, oh, this page is a redirected page. and it just finishes its task and goes on to do something else. It doesn't follow redirects because that's not its job. But it may realize that you've got a link somewhere else, then it will scrape that somewhere else. It's not part of its standard task routine, so it doesn't follow redirects.
So redirect mean like 301s?
Yeah, like 301s, 302s.
Surely the bots do follow redirects.
No, they don't. They don't follow redirects because they want to know what's actually at that URL. So if you have x.com and x.com redirects to a.com, Google wants to know what is at x.com, not what is at a.com. When it wants to know what's at a.com, it will do it again. But it will go directly to a.com, not to x.com. Right? So it probably understands that, yes, I now know that x.com redirects to a.com. I'm going to go to a.com later, but that's a separate task. That's not my current task. My current task is to find out what's at x.com. And what's at x.com is nothing, because it's just a redirection. So that's why you won't see...
What's the pointer that's index, the pointer?
Yeah, so if you go on Google, like, have you ever seen a listing that redirects somewhere else? They give you the full URL. They don't give you the... Like, they want to give you the real URL to the actual thing that you're looking for, not some redirection to somewhere, to somewhere, to somewhere, to somewhere. So that's one of the key things you might have to realize, that if you put your URL inside there, sometimes you'll see nothing. Now, this is a common source of confusion. Some people do redirections from the www dot to the normal URL. Sometimes they do it from the normal URL to the www dot. If you notice that on SnapSearch, you notice that there's no www dot. Now, this is actually the way you should actually do it in URL. You should not have www dot, but that's my own opinion. Sometimes some people care about that. So it's newer websites, you'll see that they almost always remove the www dot. That's because www dot is completely useless. What does it do? It doesn't do anything at all. Why bother making your users type more when they could just remember the name? That's it. Name dot, not domain. There we go. But because some people have www dot, if you type in www.snapsearch.io, what you'll get here is pretty much blank kind of thing. And the reason is because www.snapsearch.io, I've redirected to snapsearch.io. Right? So a normal user, if they went to www.snapsearch.io, they'll get redirected to snapsearch.io, and it just continues with the operations. But with a bot, when they go to www.snapsearch.io, they'll just see nothing. And so we want to replicate that behavior. That's why the SnapSearch will also show you nothing, because that's what the bot would see. They wouldn't follow the redirections, they would just see nothing. In which case, we would just show you nothing as well. And it's not because the backend server is not working. It's not because you couldn't access the site. It's because it's a redirection. So just be aware of what your actual URLs are doing, and that kind of stuff. Any other questions?
Have you found with your SnapSearch that using that has resulted in actually increased traffic to those sites? Better traffic or better ranking?
So, what do you think? Do you think if you had content on your site that was, brought in from JavaScript, and that wasn't available originally in your search engines, but now it is available, do you think you would get more content?
I would think so, yeah. But I'm asking in your experience.
Well, in my experience, it depends, because maybe your content sucks. Right? So
content that sucks still sucks.
Yeah,
right,
so
okay.
if content sucks, it still sucks. So what if Google knows about it?
Okay.
If it's good content and Google didn't know about it, now it knows about it, then obviously you're going to get some benefit out of that. But it really depends. It's not so much this is going to improve your traffic. This is a tool to solve a problem that you might have in getting content available and to be seen by search engines and social network bots. Whether you get better traffic or not, that's still your job to do.
The original implementation of the Googlebot used to be a text-based browser, and Google got excited if you recognize that in the HTTP header and you gave it different content. Are you not giving it different content?
No, actually, this is actually encouraged by Google. So there's actually a page on Google's documentation that says, if you've got a site that uses a lot of JavaScript, you need to implement the solution. Because they don't give you a solution, what I'm doing is I've implemented the solution and giving you the solution now. So that way you don't have to implement it yourself. So on the particular page you'll see, if I can scroll down, delete it on here. So you see the first one, Google approved. So it complies with the Ajax crawling specification created by Google. SnapSearch responds to the exact same content as a normal user would see, so you're not in violation of cloaking rules.
Okay.
You scrolled quickly over that.
That's worth.
Speaking of Ajax scrolling specification, Google says you can also use HTML5 push state functionality to deliver Ajax delivered content. So why would I even need to add those extra lines of code where I can just use HTML5 push state for figure out push state.
Push state
Functionality, tag that particular piece of HTML, give it an ID, and change the DOM whenever the user clicks on, like let's say the example that you showed, you click on a button, that particular piece of HTML is being tagged by an ID, and then that triggers it based on HTML push state.
Yeah.
So,
did you know that this site uses push state?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all my sites use push state. I don't use hashtags. They're all use push state. Push state still relies on JavaScript.
Which brings me to my second question. How do you manage those hashbang URLs? Because from a search traffic point of view, going back to a friend's question over there, is the challenge I face with one-page applications is Google doesn't index anything after the hashbang. So
okay, so it's actually solved. That problem is addressed and actually completely solved. It's the middleware. The middleware solves that problem. So what he's talking about is this thing here. So you see this hashtag here? Well, that's not what I'm talking about. So this site uses push state. It's a single page application, and you'll notice that if I change to a different page, so for example, I go to, let's say, the pricing page. No, that's interesting. For some reason, the URL is not changing. So normally, what would happen is that the URL would change. So you would see SnapSearch.com/documentation.
yeah, so that's HTML5.
Yeah, that's HTML5 push
Push
state.
state, yes.
Now, before HTML5 came along, when people wanted to create dynamic applications, they couldn't use push state, right? So what they did is they used this thing called a hashbang, or they used the hash part of the URL to change. They changed the hash part, and so it didn't cause the browser to reload. So this is like goes back to Web 1.0, Web 2.0, back in those days, where if you change the URL, the browser would automatically change and reload and refresh the page. Now people back in the days who were trying to innovate and create more interactive application, they were like, no, we don't like this. We want the website to stay normal, but we still want to have some sort of direction marker saying that you're on this page and you're on that page, and so on and so forth. So what they had to do is they had to change the hash part of the URL. So the hash part of the URL would look like something like this. Right, so anything after the hash does not make the browser refresh its website. So what they did is they simply changed the hash. So for example, if I was on the about page, maybe it changes to about. So if I didn't go to the blog, maybe it changes to the blog. And every time I change that hashtag, you as a user can still see that, okay, so I'm on blog now, or I'm on about, or I'm on products. But the browser won't know because the hashtag doesn't get communicated and make the browser refresh. So the browser doesn't think, oh, you've changed your own. Let me refresh the entire page for you. So that's making the browser refresh the entire page, which allowed you to keep a URL standard. So something / something / something / and you still have the ability of having dynamic applications. And so this now brings up an interesting issue. We have two types of URLs that we need to consider and solve. And so the middleware is where this code is that solves it. So let me show you how it does it. Okay, so let's take a look at the source code here. And let's take a look at, I believe it's the detector. So you can see that there are three main classes: client, detector, and interceptor. Interceptor basically brings in these two classes, these two objects, again, brings into the interceptor. The client is the one that requests it from SnapSearch. The detector is the one that detects whether the client needs to be intercepted. The detector is also the class that actually solves what you are asking about. So you can see that this class is pretty big. As you go down, Okay, so we have the detect function. It does 8 things. It detects if the request came from a search engine bot. It will intercept in the cascading order. First, it will only do it on a GET request. Why intercept a post or a put or other protocols. It will only do it on GET because only search engines do GET. The Googlebot does not do a post request, does not do a put, nor does it do a delete request. It will only do it on an HTTP or an HTTPS protocol. So if you've got HTTP or if you've got like some mail protocol, then obviously it's not going to be intercepted. It's not going to be only on any ignored robot user agent. So you can specify user agents in which you want to ignore. So user agents are the signature of the client. It will not on any route matching the whitelist, so you can whitelist your routes that you want to match. You can blacklist routes. You can also set up invalid file extensions. So we don't want to intercept, say, for example, MP3. So if you've got something, your site.com/something.mp3, we don't want to intercept that because you just want to give that raw data to the bot. Now, you see on number 7, that's what tells the thing that you're changing your page state. Then you still need the normal hashes, right, to represent the anchors, right? So if you've got an A tag, an anchor tag, you might have something like an ID, something like that, or a title ID. You still need the normal hashes to represent those anchors, but you've just taken over it and used it for page transitions. So what you need to do is you need to differentiate these two types of operations. So what Google suggests you to do, and it's what is part of the specification, is that your page transition should be hash bang, your anchor should be hash. So your hash happens after hash bangs. So imagine a URL like this. So for example, I might be on the about page, but then I might be on the anchor on the about page, such as like us. So you can see that there's the about, which is part of the hash bang, and then the hash is the actual anchor. Okay. So with these two types of URLs, you need to use this thing called an underscore escape underscore fragment underscore query. And this basically translates your hashbang style URLs, so about, into a query parameter. And this is, again, part of the Ajax specification by Google. You know where it is? It's right there, actually. There's a link. So open it up. So this is the part where it talks about those issues. So it gives you kind of ideas of how you might implement it. It's all kind of complicated though. And yeah, so there's a part, I think it's here, full specifications. If you go here, you'll read the actual full specification, which SnapSearch complies by. So you'll see that things like hash, so there's your hash fragments, but it asks you to change it to hash bang, which is a good idea. And then you use a meta tag, you put it inside your site, and it tells Googlebot that says, okay, I've got a different type of URL. And then of course it gives you this thing called a underscore escape fragment concept here. So this here then takes the section that you have inside the hash bang and moves it to the query parameters. And in doing so, you're able to basically have those types of URLs to be indexed. So you can see that here's the kind of bidirectional between hashbang style URLs to underscore escape, underscore fragment URLs, right? Migrating from that to that, migrating from that to that. Now, to explain all of that will take more time than we have right now. But just be sure that the middleware that we've developed with PHP, Ruby, Node.js, Python, they do that. They do the whole migration between the two types of URLs so that Google is able to understand what you're talking about and what you need. So if we go down here, so you'll see that there's actually quite a few complicated stuff, like regular expressions to find out whether your URL ends in a particular file extension, stuff like that. Getting code. Okay, so here's where you actually start getting a bit complicated. Now the reason why, the last time I actually looked at the source code was 4 months ago, so I'm a bit actually.
Was that commented regex?
Yeah, that's commented regex.
Oh, go back. It's just, I've got to see it. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oh my God. I have never seen something as beautiful.
Yeah,
that's gorgeous.
That is actually a very complex
this guy's a guru.
But I use this thing.
It's really awesome.
For those who don't understand this,
your average programmer doesn't do this.
Sorry?
The average programmer doesn't do this. They just write a piece of incomprehensible crap
Incomprehensible, yeah.
that nobody will be able to read again.
Well, the problem
It's
is,
gorgeous.
so what this does is basically, it's a regular expression language that detects whether your URL contains a file extension or not. Right? You think that's really simple, but apparently it's not. There's so many different things you might need to consider. But as I was saying, this is the part where it starts doing the whole migration. So first we need to get an encoded URL, and of course comments explains what that is. And then we have something that gets the decoded into the R. And then we have this thing. Right? Get real QS and hash fragments. That's the part where there's a bit of complication there. And as I said, I only looked at this 4 months ago, and so I don't actually remember how I did it. But obviously that's why I commented it really well, so if I need to go back, I can understand what I'm doing.
We're a true program.
Yeah, exactly.
Amen, brother. Richards.
That's it. Yeah. So that's the part which deals with that hash bane fragment problem.
Well, the example that you showed earlier, the HP.co,
Yeah.
as you clicked on the different options, the URL changed.
Yeah.
Now, what Google ends up indexing, would that look like one page,
Oh, yeah,
or are they, is each URL navigable?
So look at that. You see how there's a hash in between them?
Yeah.
That's a hash style URL. And if they wanted to utilize SnapSearch, they had to change it to a hash bane. Because a hash-based URL is not compliant with the Ajax spec. And the reason is what I told you before. There's no differentiation between what is a name period and what is an actual page transition. Some people don't care about that, but that's why. I mean, HN.Premier is not utilizing SnapSearch. I'm just using it as a good example of a site that could be using SnapSearch, and that would be enhanced by that.
Well, in that case, what would Google index? Would it show you just the one page, premier.com?
Each change in that URL would be a completely new page.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so let's take a look how SnapSearch is utilized in Google. Right? You see how that SnapSearch is the main slide, and there's the documentation, there's a control panel, there's a control panel cache, there's a control panel payments, there's a control panel account. All of these pages are indexed and they're understood as separate pages, even though they are all part of the same page, and they're all loaded in one go, and they're transitioned by HTML5 push state. You see how there's no hash bane? It's push state based.
Could each of those virtual pages have separate meta tags?
Yeah, I mean, you could if you wanted to. I mean, you need to write it in your dynamic language in the backend. Just a note based on what they were talking about, what the person was talking about before with regards to the hash bane. So I actually say here, attention, sites using hash bane URLs, such as hash need to add a special meta tag. You see our notes on hash bane URLs. So you click on this, it'll just go all the way at the bottom. And it will say that make sure you're using hash bane URLs and not just hash URLs. This fits with the Google Ajax calling scheme, makes it easier to identify what is a hash and what is meant to be a path. Hash fragments are never passed to the server. The winnerware needs to know the full HTTP URL, or else it won't know where to scrape. This means that you need to rely on search engine robots to convert hash bane URL to query fragment URL. This meta tag needs to be on every page in bold. Meta name fragment content exclamation mark. So if you are using hash bane style URL, you have to have that meta tag on every single page for it to work. Now, my suggestion is don't use hash bane URLs. Use HTML5 push state, so you don't have this problem. You stop using hash bane URLs. That's like 5 years ago kind of stuff. So start using HTML5 push state. You have better looking URLs and you don't have this issue.
Google's got pretty URLs and ugly URLs.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So how many of you guys are actually building like single page applications or JavaScript coming in and stuff?
Just rank sites.
Yeah, so the idea is basically if you guys are building that, or if you are an SEO consultant and you've got people building interactive stuff, you can just basically tell them about this particular problem and solution.
Many thank you.